Hi, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. I'll be our moderator for today. We've got about 10 participants here, so this should be pretty good. We're doing navigating changing laws and compliance during COVID-19. This is a relatively small group, but I think a useful group because we had a lot of issues with people navigating their local compliance, particularly earlier in the year. I think now people are a bit more settled into knowing how to go about compliance. I think those issues are starting to pick up again as we've seen the virus begin to surge all over the country. And I know in particular, Hawaii has been a place where there's been a lot of on and off lockdown, and we're seeing that in California now. But today is a chance to network. We're going to identify some challenges, identify solutions, and just general issues that you may have. I have a sample reporting document where I'm gonna assign two people to be reporters for this group, so to speak, and try and have those people try to condense and present some of this information to all conference attendees on our last day, December 8th. As to who those two people will be, do we have any volunteers for people who'd like to sort of take notes here or take notes as we discuss over this next hour and 10 minutes? Okay, not a problem. I'm gonna go with Justin because you're here on video, and Robert because I see your smiling face. So I'd like to encourage as many people as we can to get off video and so we can do some proper networking. Of course, it's not mandatory, but it would be helpful. Justin and Robert, I'm going to send you this reporting table.
So why don't we start with Priya? Give us sort of an idea on some of the things that you guys have been dealing with and seeing this year, and then we'll address some of the questions that are coming from this group. And since it is a small group, I think we could have a much more interesting and directed conversation.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Priya Lane. I am the BizGrow Director at Lawyers for Civil Rights in Boston. BizGrow is the name of our small business practice. So I'm an attorney and I work with minority, immigrant, woman-owned small businesses. We do totally free pro bono representation of small businesses like yours on common topics like entity formation, trademark, contract disputes, and just form contracts you need written, tax work, accounting work, all that stuff that you guys all know that small businesses need. And then we also do workshops on topics. So either we'll meet directly with clients or we'll have classes, classroom style workshops. We also do clinics where you'd be able to meet one-on-one with attorneys who specialize in certain subject matter areas like tax attorneys or intellectual property attorneys, for example. So we try to kind of plug all the gaps legal-wise for small businesses. And so obviously for this past year, there's been a lot of new issues that have come to the forefront for small businesses. I know that I'm preaching to the choir here with a group like this. But obviously throughout the country, we've faced unprecedented issues that small businesses are facing. So we've tried to help by setting up sort of new programming specifically for COVID response. So PPP applications, for example, and then asking for forgiveness. And then locally in Massachusetts, we've had a lot of grant programs and other funding opportunities for, COVID kind of bridging the gap. But there's also a lot of specific legal issues that I think come up under pandemic times that are really unique. So for example, the reopening guidelines, that's going to vary from state to state, but also vary from industry to industry and sometimes city to city and building to building. And it can cause a lot of confusion. And you guys want to do the right thing. You want to be safe, but you also want to feed your families. And so trying to make sure that we skate that line of doing everything correctly, doing everything safely, but also making sure that your business continues to be sort of the means of income that it is intended to be for you and your family. Also lease negotiations here in Massachusetts. We had a moratorium on commercial evictions that has very recently expired. So now there's sort of a flood of issues related to small businesses, small businesses possibly being evicted or something else. So, trying to bridge those gaps. And then I think on the non-legal side, but the more practical business side, businesses have to pivot to online only, sometimes online only, depending where we're at with the pandemic, sometimes, really online forward, but having that really a strong online presence. Maybe before you were fine just subsisting on farmers markets and sort of that face-to-face interaction. I think that this past year has really shown us that without a strong online presence, you'll have problems in situations like this. And so, really pivoting, helping small businesses design and develop websites. And then, I think the common themes and challenges are all those things, right? Moving to an online presence, how to keep your employees when you are forced to shut down by the state. Maybe you have some key employees that, are the bread and butter of your business, and how do we make sure that we retain them while still keeping the lights on, while still, doing good by them. And then again, like going back to just knowing that you're complying with these new regulations that can often be very confusing and and change pretty rapidly. And, we've seen a lot of really unique businesses. I know there's probably some food businesses here, unique businesses that, will adapt and use their servers that are no longer serving because they can't have that many people in the restaurant. Maybe they're using their servers as delivery drivers and are now retaining all those employees, but just repositioning them in a certain way to meet sort of the new regulations. Recently in Massachusetts, this past year, we've allowed restaurants to offer cocktails to go. And I hope that stays forever. I think that's fantastic. And so that idea of being able to still sell the liquor that is making up a lot of your overhead, but in a situation where you don't have many people indoors. And so really thinking creatively and pivoting has been, amazing to see all these small businesses do that. And so I think that we wanted to use this time in this space to really discuss creative solutions that you guys have come up with to meet these new challenges and sort of have a conversation about all that. Diego, does that sound right to you?
Yeah, that sounds great. I think also the one other thing that I think I've heard a lot has been sort of renegotiating things like rental leases and things like that, because obviously a number of people went home and you have spaces that are office spaces that are not being used, etc. So, but I'll open it up, and I'm going to sort of call on Robert to start us off. I know if memory serves, Robert, you're in the childcare business.
Yep, that's correct.
All right.
And
Glad that I still remember. I know. So go ahead.
Start us off. Here are some of my concerns. We are a Main Street type business where we interact directly with customers. That means my staff are directly exposed, even though they wear PPP and follow all of the necessary protocols as required by CDC and guidelines from the Philadelphia Department of Health. Consequently, even though we can provide these types of protections, nothing is absolute. People make mistakes, people get sick, and as much as we can control what goes on within the workplace, I have no control over what they do and how they practice safety outside the workplace. So out of 48 employees, I now have 8 employees who have positive COVID-19 test results. So the question becomes at this point, what is my responsibility? If we have to shut down for 2 weeks, can I put them on furlough or do I have to pay them? I do have less than 50 full-time employees. What protections do I have from the government that legislation is going to offer me some protections that if we have provided reasonable and prudent protections for the staff and they still get sick, that they still can't come after the business. So at a time when we've had to see half of our staff stay at home and quarantine for 14 weeks because of exposure, do I have to pay them while I'm having very little income coming in? And 2 is, what do I need to do to protect the business from future liability?
Robert, where are you located?
In Philadelphia, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so I'm a Massachusetts attorney, so I can't give you any legal advice. So I would one, call the Department of Health. I don't know if you've already done that, but
Already been there.
What?
Already been there.
Already been there. Okay. So and that's my advice to everyone, right? If you have any sort of outbreak or positive tests, the first thing you should do is call the Board of Health in your local county, state, whatever, however it's structured in your specific state. Yep. Because you need to make sure that you're following our local guidelines. Robert, I would look at the Attorney General's office or any sort of guidelines you can find for Pennsylvania to see about furloughing. I think furloughing is often the best method and something that small businesses have used to their advantage during the pandemic, because it allows you to continue paying benefits, which are, can be relatively kind of folded into your overhead anyway. So it's not super costly per employee, right? It's like a lump sum you're paying every month anyway, whatever your benefits may be. And in Massachusetts, at least, we have some options called work share and things where we can kind of semi-furlough employees while still paying them part-time wages. Obviously, if you have a positive COVID test, they're not working at all. And so if they're employees you want to keep, and furloughing is often the best way. And if they have access to short-term disability or anything else through your benefits package, if they have positive COVID results, they might be able to kind of tap into those benefits too. So they feel like they're still bringing in income, right? Like you don't feel like you're paying an employee who's not working, but they feel like they have sort of a bridge there too. And employees and employer are both, happy, which I think is the goal for this situation, to retain these employees.
That's all really good information, but what about the CARES Act and how does that impact me? What about my responsibility to pay them for 2 weeks of paid sick leave? And does
Yeah,
that
so
apply
it depends on how big your business is. How many employees you have?
under 50 employees?
You have under 50, so a lot of the CARES Act stuff doesn't apply directly to businesses that have under 50. Normally in employment law, under 50 is a small business and doesn't have as much affected. But I would again talk to an attorney licensed in Pennsylvania because I don't know specific state laws for Pennsylvania.
Well, it's a federal law though.
Yeah, I know, but I don't want to give you advice because I don't know if there's a Pennsylvania law. Like in Massachusetts, there's a lot of Massachusetts law that supersedes federal law because we have better laws.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's hard to know when it's a different state. Yeah.
Right. Right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
And so do we want to go around and maybe have everyone introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their business and sort of the struggles they've been having?
Let's do that. And I'm going to have Robert call on the next person, and the next person will call someone else.
All right. How about Tony?
How are you doing? My name is Tony Febles. We run a distribution in technical sales outfit in the Caribbean. We sell to the islands and the countries in the area. So if you think that the laws will be a little different from state to state, I guess in Puerto Rico will be a lot different. I really don't have any major questions or remarks about law issues. I was assigned to this one, but it's good to hear what's going on so we can have a better feel of the things happening. So that's about it for me.
All right, Tony, who I guess we'll go to Cheo since we can see him.
Cheo sounds like a good name for me too.
Can you see me?
We can hear you and see you.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Cheo Hurley. I'm the owner of THG Companies, LLC. I'm a construction company based in Baltimore. We're a construction subcontractor. And we've been growing rapidly. COVID has affected us in a few ways. I mean, I've had a few of my employees that actually catch COVID this year, which is kind of affected us. But we just keep trucking along. And so that's what we do. We're trying to grow still, despite all the uncertainty. But one thing's for certain, in this region, construction's still kind of moving at a strong pace, fortunately. And what we're trying to figure out going forward is what happens with all these office buildings, et cetera, especially those ones built before 2000 that don't necessarily are not necessarily outfitted with what they need. You know, are these things going to stay offices? Or are they going to turn into something else? So that's where we are. And it's nice to meet you all. And I look forward to the conversation.
I would love to hear a little bit about, so when your employees did have COVID, sort of how that positive test sort of affected your business and sort of the solutions you use to keep going with it.
Yeah, so I mean, a positive test, so in construction, it does a couple things, right? Because you work in close proximity with so many other subcontractors, and you have a general contractor that is driven by budget and schedule. You don't want anybody to catch it just because you don't want your employees to get sick. But also, you don't want any sort of black eye against your company because they think that your people weren't careful. I mean, that's what we feel, right? Even though it's not anyone's fault. I mean, you can go home, you can get it from a family member, you could go to pump gas and get it from somebody who was just in passing. A subcontractor like myself feels responsible, right? And how is this going to affect me for getting the next job? Now, when it actually happened, I had one of my employees was out like 2 days. He had a fever one day. It was pretty early on. Then he was fine. My other employee, I mean, he was out probably 4 weeks. and he, thank goodness we had the PPP. I was able to keep him on. And I was able to bring him back once he got better. But we were really worried about his health. Now, my assistant in the office, her mom got it and died, right? And so we felt these ramifications of this of COVID. I mean, it's real. I personally know now. I don't know, almost 5 people who passed away from it, and I've known a bunch of people who have gotten it. So there are a lot of dynamics that we worry about. I recently had to write a letter, kind of a nasty letter, to a general contractor because they keep pushing schedule, and they have 13 subs all in a 3,200 square foot area. And guys, people not wearing masks over their nose and pulling the mask down while they're working and other stuff. And it threw up a red flag. I might not get work from this GC again. I don't know. But I'd rather deal with that for a job I'm not really making a lot of money than have somebody get really sick and pass away and can't take care of their family. So it's real though. Construction is real, and construction is kind of still like the wild, wild west in some respects. So it's you got to get it done, and you got to get it done on time. And so that will affect how people approach work. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so your PPP loan was sort of able to bridge that gap for you for payroll wise while people.
Right. So I've been fortunate. I got a PPP loan, I got an EIDL loan, and I got a grant from the state of Maryland. And all of those things really, although we've continued to work, some of our hours were cut down. Like you asked about what happened, how do we bridge the gap when we lost people? I had to move folks around to cover those folks who were sick, meaning I couldn't take other jobs, meaning I had to reach out to like short-term employment services, construction service, to fill some of the positions I had, which cost more money, right? And so it cut into my profit. So I've been just juggling, but I've been able to keep everybody working. I've been able to pay all the bills. We made it to the end of another year. My profit is not going to be as big as it was the year before when I was like one of the top companies for ICIC. But that's fine. I mean, I'm still in business, which I'm grateful for,
That's right. Awesome. So I think, can you pick someone else to speak? I think you're muted.
Yeah, Cheo, I think you muted yourself.
Christine, is Christine on? Yep. Sorry about that.
Christine, we can see that you unmuted yourself, but I'm not hearing any audio.
Can you hear my audio now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. I had my headset was not allowing me to have audio, and I'm not on video. I apologize because I'm kind of multitasking, which you should never do when you're trying to attend a conference. But this is a session that I wanted to participate in. But again, I'm Christine Bivens. I'm Cheo. I worked with your wife, so I'm kind of going to get you for phone on me, but that's okay.
I thought I knew that name. I was like, that name sounds familiar. Yep.
That's all good. Well, now I'm with the Capital Region Minority Supplier Development Council. I retired from government a few years back. And with Capital Region Minority Supplier Development Council is one for ICIC and ICCC. It's one of the nominating resource partners. So I don't own a business, but our job as part of the National Minority Supplier Development Council is to assist ethnic minority businesses with getting, it's not just getting contracts, forming relationships, turning those relationships into revenue, stealing that from the president, with corporate members. So our members are Fortune 500 companies. Our certified firms are anywhere from startups to hundreds of millions and sometimes into the billions of certified firms. And I don't have any questions, just mostly kind of taking all things in.
I think we'll go to
Christine.
Justin,
Okay.
or let's see, back on screen. Justin?
Justin, you're okay.
Hey, I'm Justin, and I own a hot sauce company in Maui, Hawaii, called Ice Spice. And don't mind the mustache. I was growing that out for Movember, and it's a good month for that. Maui and Hawaii obviously got hit pretty hard with COVID in the sense that our entire economy got shut down because it's almost all tourism. And so as the mainland states become more and more affected by it, Hawaii in turn gets even more affected by it. So in March, when everything shut down, thankfully we already had a online platform to sell our products, but we had to turn to that 100% because all of our hotels and restaurants here were all shut down. We had half of our workforce left to go back to the mainland because that's where their families lived and they wanted to be close to family. So our production took a hit because of that. And thankfully, we're a small operation as it is, but we were able to keep everyone on board because our production slowed down. We had enough work for all of us working. We did get a small PPP loan. But because they changed the rules on that, it started with only, you had 8 weeks to use it. And then at like the 6-week mark, they said, oh, you have 24 weeks to use it now. So instead of us allowing us to spread that money out over, 6 months, we used it up in 3 months, which didn't do us any good. I mean, we were grateful to get it, but we could have used it more effectively if we could have stretched it out a little bit more. So that was a challenge. We weren't eligible for some other grants, federal grants and things like that, because the property we rent, even though it's certified with the county and the state as a commercial business, and we're operating as a commercial business out of it, for some reason the property is zoned as residential. And a lot of these grants that were being given by the federal government were only eligible to commercially zoned properties. So because we rent, I had zero control over that. So we lost out on probably $25,000 to $35,000 in grant opportunities because of that. So that was frustrating. As far as safety goes with our employees, we're a small operation, so we have less to worry about, but Maui in itself, where we are, had one of the lowest rates of COVID in the country. I think right now we're hovering right around 20 active cases. So it's really awesome, but that's because Hawaii cut off its right hand in the sake of safety. All right, I'll be with you in a little while. I'm on a meeting right now.
Okay, I'm gonna open up with Joe. Come back maybe. Okay.
Sorry. So yeah, I mean, it's been a balance of keeping our employees employed, which we were able to do because half our employees left, and then keeping them safe at the same time, and then shifting our entire business online, not knowing if our wholesale business would ever come back. So it's been a three-way juggle like that. So we're hoping for the best for 2021.
Priya, before we move on to Leslie, have you guys had similar situations with those changing rules of throughout the year and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, the PPP loans, the way they were rolled out, right, was so confusing for small businesses, and thinking that you would have spread that money out, right, if you had known that you had 24 weeks instead of, 8 or 6 or whatever they said. And it's the same with the unemployment benefits, right? Not knowing when the pandemic unemployment assistance was going to end and how many weeks you had made budgeting really hard for small businesses. And For the really, really small businesses that don't have employees, the PPP loans, were not super effective because they're for payroll. And so if you are, just you and maybe just one other person, the vast majority of your money doesn't go to payroll. It's really good for nonprofits because nonprofits, the vast majority of money is payroll. They don't have a lot of overhead. But for small businesses, you have other employees are the last things you add, right? You have you build everything else first and then you start adding employees. And so the PPP loans, are not super, not as good as they could have been in the way it was rolled out. So we've seen that across the board. The zoning issue you raised is really interesting, and I haven't heard that from others. And yeah, that's an interesting point. That obviously you can't help how your building is zoned, you're just a renter. And so thanks for bringing that up. That's really interesting. I wanna find out more about that.
Leslie? Leslie, you're on mute.
Thank you, Diego. Aloha and good afternoon to most of you. Good morning to my fellow Mauian, Justin, who is on the phone. I'm with the Maui Economic Development Board. We are a nonprofit we're about almost 40 years old. Our singular mission has been to build diversifying sectors in our economy that would balance our economy from its gross overdependence on the visitor industry. Not that we don't want to welcome you all back to Maui when it is safe to do so, but obviously the pandemic has underscored how absolutely frightening it is when 70% of your economy is in one sector. So Justin described it more beautifully than I could from a firsthand entrepreneurial perspective. I was really interested in this panel because we do a lot of individual coaching and asking questions. Sometimes we're a clearinghouse if we don't have obviously the legal expertise or economic expertise on staff. We have lots of partners, of which we're delighted that ICIC is one of them. I believe we nominated 24 businesses this year that are in the Hawaii cohort. But so knowing now some of them have gotten PPP, they're in the process of applying for forgiveness, their EIDL loans, how do they maximize that? The state and county, we've been getting that money, the allocation, CARES Act funding allocation that came to the state and then came to the county. We're absolutely exhausted. We had such limited time to get out $5 million to our small Maui County, and MEDB is the administrative agency to help with CARES Act funding. We called it the Adaptability Fund. We asked businesses to try to lay out a plan, and we coached them on how to bring their business online, to open up e-commerce, knowing that the visitors weren't coming to our shores. How do they get their product and their work out to broader audiences? And then of course, a lot of now coaching on the safely opening. The state opened October 15th with a pre-COVID test required 72 hours prior to departure. So the numbers are still very small. People aren't wanting to travel. People don't have money to travel for vacation destinations. So our hotels, which just opened November 1, most of the big resorts are at best booked for 20% occupancy. So we still have one of the highest unemployment rates in the nation. So this is really important. Thank you for any compliance recommendations. I'm really looking for your guidance on that as we continue to help our small business. The good news is we had 500 applications. I think Justin's was one of them. I hope he got some money from the Adaptability Fund for Hawaii Spice. So we got on average between 15 to 25,000 out to 500 businesses in Maui County to help them with their e-commerce positioning, or helping with their inside offices or retail spaces with adding filtration, ionization, plexiglass, whatever it took to make those safe.
Right. And I think the last participant is Annie. Or we'll check on Dustin, but I have the feeling that Dustin may be one of our team members. Annie? She may just be listening, so we'll go back to you, Priya. Anything?
Yeah, no, I think these are all really good points. I'd love to hear from some of the small businesses and also from Leslie and Christine, who work with small businesses. What, are there any things you've employed or that you've seen your businesses employ that have been really sort of unique solutions to, these problems? Leslie, I think you mentioned, some moving some stuff online. I just love to hear kind of ideas or things that you thought have been really unique and, want to share that with this group.
This is Leslie. What I'll share is not only do we help our small businesses with, helping them identify what they can move to an online shopping cart and e-commerce presence, but what we did is we also created a directory, an online companion directory of all the Maui County small businesses that did web design, that did social media, that did marketing consultation, that, did SEO, whatever it took. And I think we have like 250 businesses on that, construction companies to install your HVAC filtration, so that we could recirculate that money, the grantees who got that money from the adaptability fund for those. Then we asked them, it wasn't required because it's federal money. You can't make those geographic restrictions, but we encourage them to go to the Ho'olu site, which is growth in Hawaiian, businesses to utilize their services. And we facilitated that coaching kind of thing, and we will continue. I think the coaching is only going to get even more intense now that the money is there, that the online presence is starting to populate, how to again maximize that. And so again, I think that's really important to make one small business connection with another small business connection, so that they create this synergistic relationship, and it also recirculates the money in your economy.
Just a minute. That sounds great, but from one islander to the other, the only thing that really helped us to go online was making deals with UPS and FedEx, because everything we have to fly in or out, and we were able to get 55 or 57% discount with FedEx, and makes a huge difference, because if not, we couldn't do that. But that's something that you might, as a group in Maui, try to figure out how to do. I don't know, the postal office or FedEx or UPS, one or the other. So yeah, that could be good. One unique thing that we had to do is our morale in even though we didn't fire anybody, actually we hired somebody in the process because we need to do some other stuff. The morale was low. Everybody was expecting every other month to get fired. We even had to hire a psychologist to do some virtual chats with our group, because everybody was like gloom and boom, and we're all gonna die, and I'm gonna get fired, and I'm not gonna be able to pay my mortgage. And it took us a while to get the whole team, and again, it's a small company, we're only 17 people at this time, but it was very difficult to get people engaged. And we even had problems with people that we never had issues before. They were snapping back at you, and they were really, really stressed out, and and that helped a lot to us. So that was something I wanted to share with you guys.
That's fantastic. Justin also had a good suggestion in the chat that he got a huge discount for FedEx via an association. So sometimes different chambers of commerce or other small business associations, you can band together and get really great discounts on shipping, but also things like healthcare for your employees, or there's or other benefits. So sometimes that can be really good, almost like a AAA membership. You can get a lot of other discounts from it. Does anyone else have any sort of solutions that they've either seen or heard or employed themselves that they found particularly useful?
I am certainly going to plug organizations like yours, Priya, for legal services and consultation. So I think it's worthwhile having conversations with similar groups in your state and finding some of those services.
Yeah, and we're Massachusetts based, but there's a lot of pro bono legal opportunities for small businesses. It's just sometimes hard to find in different states. But if you are looking for some legal advice and you don't know where to start, if there's a lawyers committee, if California on, but if there's a lawyers committee in your state, Lawyers for Civil Rights is one of the lawyers committees. You can check there to see if they do any corporate work. You can also check your bar association, so city and state bar associations, and they often will have pro bono programs, especially around COVID. If you have a legal issue that is COVID related, and I think that can be pretty broad, right? Like, so they're not going to help you buy another business, right? That's not COVID related, but a lease renegotiation, definitely COVID related. You probably wouldn't have to renegotiate your lease if not for the pandemic. Different kinds of contract renegotiations in light of clauses or not being able to deliver because of the pandemic. You can interpret sort of COVID related pretty way. And a lot of them have pro bono programs specifically for this. And first comes to, you can also just email large law firms. They take a certain percentage of pro bono cases every year, and yours might be one of them. So, don't be ashamed or afraid to ask. Pro bono, there's a strong pro bono culture in the legal world. We lawyers, like to do it because it's like a nice change from the large corporation that they normally represent, and also in some states have to do it to maintain their license every year, a certain amount of hours. So definitely ask. Does anyone else have anything that they want to talk about? Diego, I think we have 10 or 15 minutes, or Jared, right? I'm not sure when this ends.
Well, and I forgot to take out
Go ahead.
my speaker. If it's all right, I just wanted to mention, and I do really apologize. My boss would be very upset with me for not having my video on right now, but it's just one of those. Unfortunately, I really can't because I am horribly multitasking. But with regard to, I like what I forget names, so my apologies. Leslie, as Leslie was bringing out too, one of the things that we've seen with our businesses is some have actually pivoted during this, crisis really time that they've been going through. So we have had some businesses, many of our businesses have been impacted obviously by COVID. We have as well as an organization also, but we've been, teleworking. A lot of the folks who I speak with from our business owners, and they run the gamut. I mean, we've got folks who are just about anything that a corporation or a city or business, a large company would need. Those are the areas of businesses that we have, and so some have pivoted and actually started providing some of the PPE. They may have been in. We've had some that were in marketing that have also had relationships, and that's the other thing. We've seen more of our certified firms gravitate towards each other to do more teaming and developing relationships with each other so that someone can help provide, fill a need where they may have been lacking so that they could fill the needs of a corporate member. We've also been providing, and National's been doing this as well. The National Minority Supplier Development Council has put out a grant for certain firms to be able to apply for. We have had more communication newsletters, hot sheet webinar, we call them hot sheet webinars, where we've pulled experts from, I'm calling them experts because that's what they are, but some of the top folks from the federal government when it was COVID first came out with the PPEs and the EIDL grants or loans, forgivable loans. We had the Antonio Doss from Small Business Administration, some of the other folks within the federal agencies who could answer certain questions for our businesses. We've had, and others, whoever, because it's free webinars for anyone to attend. We've had folks from our chief procurement officers from several of our corporations, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Alliance Science, and I'm forgetting some, BAE Systems. It's kind of larger corporations so that they could find out not only how things are going at the larger corporations, because they're also impacted, but then how to ensure that their businesses can keep going and getting contracts, getting business with these larger corporations. So there are many different resource types of webinars that we put on that, at least a lot of the feedback we received, we were told it was very helpful, helped some of our corporations, smaller companies rather, to be able to continue to learn what was happening with the EIDL PPP, the when to ask for forgiveness of the loan, those sort of things. And hopefully it really was helpful. As I said before, I'm not a business owner, so I can only imagine what folks who, you who are on this call, what you have to deal with. But there are a lot of resources out there to be able to help.
That actually pivots nicely into, or pivots a little bit into the next question I wanted to ask. Thanks, Christine. So Christine, Leslie, and I work in, and Diego and ICCC and ICIC work with small businesses like yours. But, there are definitely gaps in the market. And so love to hear from you guys sort of the shortcomings of, assistance or guidance programs locally, nationally, sort of who you've interacted with, and if you have any solutions to share with the group on how you've filled those gaps, maybe some places to check out, anything like that.
Well, one resource I found was just my bank. I bank with M&T Bank, and they've been extraordinarily helpful through the pandemic. They were very transparent when it came to the PPP loans. They had a couple online sessions about, how to get the loan, how to apply for it, how to apply for forgiveness. They had outreaches. I mean, my banker called me just to see how my business was doing. I don't know if she was checking to see if I could still pay my line of credit or not. I'm sure that has something to do with it, right? But what they're finding in the industry, at least here in Baltimore, was that a lot of small businesses are falling by the wayside. And so, I would encourage people to, if they have a good relationship with a banker, lean on it. If they don't, you better get one, right? You really need that banker, because they're so important. I mean, for me, my most important people right now, my banker and my bookkeeper and the person who does my financials. I mean, those are the folks who are going to get me into next year safely, I think, other than my staff. And so, that's what I would say. I mean, the state of Maryland has had a lot of programs going on, a lot of webinars, et cetera. But for me, my banking relationship is very, very much key. Yeah,
no, I think that's a really good point. Thank you. I know a lot of the businesses I work with too are working with banks that have their own paperwork for PPP forgiveness. And that can be really useful because, you know, it's a complicated process to make sure that, yep, Justin agreed that his bookkeeper saved his butt. Like, it's a complicated process to make sure that you're getting that loan forgiven, and so important, right? And so when the banks have streamlined it, that can be really useful. And you want to have, because you never know when you're going to need to go back to them for some more money. You want to have a really good relationship with your bank. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. Does anyone else have any sort of either shortcomings of programs you've interacted with, or you know, some other resources that you've found really helpful?
No. Okay. That's not a problem. If no one has any other like shortcomings that they've identified or want to share or are ready to share, it's not a big problem. We've got about 7 minutes here left. So what I wanted to do was, we have Justin and we have Bob. They're our assigned note takers. And I want to help them out a little bit. I think Justin might need a little help. I don't know how Bob's doing, but that document that I put in the chat earlier at the top of our session, I just want to take a second to help Justin flesh out these notes a little bit. So Justin, could you tell me, what would you like some input from these other business owners in helping you sort of complete this note-taking sheet? I know that we have a few different sections. The top 3 outstanding questions or issues that we have identified, which is different than the top 3 common challenges like that we've identified. So maybe if we could talk a bit about any one of those. Justin, what do you need help with?
Am I unmuted?
Yeah, you're unmuted. You're ready. We're here. We're here to help.
I've been just trying to follow along and pay attention to everyone's stories. I realized that I wasn't taking notes the whole time. So just trying to go back and figure out what the questions are and the answers. It really, they all blend together as far as.
Bob, do you have any notes? You might have lost Bob.
So the first question, or the first challenge that I took a note on, that was actually I think Bob's comment, was the protections that are there to protect his employees that the businesses are taking, but also to make sure that the business is protected from litigation from its employees if they get COVID. It's kind of a cyclical protection problem, I guess. Then the other part that I was able to, that I thought was interesting, that I related to, was Cheo's comment about how the banks have been helpful and his bookkeeper has been the most helpful as far as getting him into next year. And that's the same for me as well. Our bookkeeper pretty much held our hand trying to get through all the PPP applications. It was so daunting, I guess, to navigate all that paperwork to make sure we didn't get denied because of a clerical error.
Right, yeah, clerical errors when filing for a lot of this COVID relief paperwork. You'd be surprised at the number, maybe you wouldn't be surprised at the number of businesses I've talked to that have really struggled with minor clerical issues, and it's ultimately resulted in them getting denied for funds that they, sorely needed. But yeah, this breakout room will be, well, not breakout room, but we'll be wrapping up here in about 4 minutes. After which time you'll have a break from 2:15 to 2:30. And then after 2:30 on our schedule, hold on one moment. bring up the schedule. We're gonna have our education breakout sessions. And that'll be about a little over an hour, so just a little bit longer than these sessions here. As always, I would encourage folks to exchange information in chat, whether you want to drop it in for everyone to see, your personal email or what have you, or if there's someone who you feel like is in close geographic proximity to you, or similar industry, please, this is the time to exchange that contact information. It's not really possible in some of our larger main rooms, so to speak.
Hi there. I came in late, but I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Christina Glabus, and I own a HIPAA compliance and GDPR compliance consulting business. So if anybody has any questions about data privacy or security regulations, I'll put my information in the chat, and I'm happy to discuss.
I'm going to drop my email address in the chat as well. So all of you guys have it. I can only help as a client, small businesses based in Massachusetts, but I'm happy to chat about specific issues you may have and or help you maybe find some resources in your own state. So I'll drop that in the chat.
For the sake of setting a good example, I'll also drop my information into the chat, and you'll have a point person that you can reach out to or email at ICIC should you ever feel the need to do so. So I'll drop my information in the chat as well.
Jared, you're muted.
Sorry. I hope everyone saw me drop my email in there. I'm going to give us about 15 seconds, and I'm going to go ahead and close this room. But thank you all so much for coming out. Thank you for participating. Thank you for helping one another.
Yeah, thank you all. It was such a pleasure to meet everyone. I hope you guys got something out of this and continue to sort of think about these possible solutions and how they might help you in your business.